1 2 mic check 1 2. How is everyone doing this evening? Let me introduce myself. My name is Kerwin Phillip. I am the author of the books. Well, the main book my first book that I wrote is called Malik's First Job: Financial Principles for Teens. It's a book about a young man going on his first job interview, and then later on, after he gets the job, sitting down with his dad to learn how to manage his money. Right, so again, just a great book to get kids started on the path to financial literacy, helping them learn some basic financial principles. That way they have a great foundation to work off of as they venture into adulthood and they're out creating a life of their own. They know how to properly manage their money, or have like the basic tools to understand how money works and how to create that great financial foundation. And then after that, I wrote several other books. I have the Money Twins, which is mainly geared towards elementary school kids, which teaches them about payment methods. We have like a lot of kids that see their parents spending money in different ways and really don't know how, like, the source of the funds, like knowing that Cash App or Venmo comes from a person's bank account versus using a credit card, which is pretty much a loan from a bank, right? Understanding those different principles is very key and essential, for kids to understand as they, start earning their own money and, just having that information, knowing that, money doesn't grow on trees and that money has to be earned. And if you borrow, you have to pay it back. And, these different funding sources for the different ways we make payments in today's society. Then my newest book that I have today is called The Interview Playbook: The Teen's Guide to Landing the Job. It's pretty much a workbook that helps teens prepare for that job search, as well as understanding the different steps they have to take to complete a job application, how to leverage experience from school and so on to put on those job applications, also knowing how to prepare for the whole process. And as we're going to discuss this evening, understanding, having a good foundation on some of the interview questions that are asked during that job interview process. Because, it's always great to practice and prepare, right? Because, there's a lot of questions that are fairly common for interviews. And again, if you take the time to do a Google search, you can look up and see, common interview questions. That way you don't go in as nervous, right? Because I know going into a job interview and not knowing what to expect, there's a certain level of nervousness that will exist. And nervousness is it's not necessarily a bad thing. In the back of the day, I used to play football, and, before games, I feel slightly nervous. And I know that for the games where I felt nervous, I had a good game, versus the games where I didn't feel as nervous, then didn't have as good as the game, right? Because that nervousness is like a indicator that you're taking the situation very serious and you're thinking about it, right? Because if you didn't really care and you was nonchalant, you wouldn't feel nervous at all because you didn't care. But if it's a situation that you really care about, then you'll feel those butterflies in your stomach because you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're, understanding what's going to take place. So, nervousness is not necessarily a bad thing, but to help level some of that stuff out is always good to be prepared, right? So let's go ahead and jump in to some of these interview questions, right? And like I said, you can go online. You can look at, do a Google search, common interview questions, and, find ways how to best prepare for those questions and how to answer them. That way, again, you have your thoughts clear and you're able to articulate and be more confident during that interview process, right? So for the one of the first questions that interviewer is going to ask you is going to be, tell me about yourself, right? So you're going to say, okay, well, just tell me about yourself And how you want to answer that particular question is pretty much you say your name, what your current role is, if you're a student, just a little bit about yourself, your activities, your interests, and why you're applying for the job, right? So for example, if the person asks me the question, so tell me about yourself, I can say that, yes, so my name is Kerwin Phillip. I'm a student at XYZ High School. I'm a junior. It's my junior year. I'm currently on the football team. I play, running back, on the varsity team. I'm really into sports, hanging out with my friends. But I'm here, as an applicant for this particular position because I'm looking to gain some work experience as well as start to earn my own money, right? And that kind of gives them a small glimpse at who you are, what your interests are, and why you're applying for the particular position, right? So that's, again, probably like the first question they're going to ask you is tell me about yourself, right? Another question that's pretty common, they may ask you, what are your strengths, right? So what are your strengths? What are some things that you're good at, right? Are you good with numbers? Are you good, like your math skills, are they up to par? Are you pretty good with social media, like knowing how to edit and create videos, using Canva? Are you good with AI, using ChatGPT to create prompts and do different things? Also, or do you draw? Like, what are some of your hobbies that, you're really good at? Do you have good communication skills? And so on. So just let them know, well, for example, you could say, well, I'm really good with numbers and I'm also great with connecting with people and networking. I feel I'm a people person and I have a real good ability to interact with other people, right? And that's a skill that's very important because oftentimes if you're getting that first position, more than likely you're going to be in some type of retail environment and you're going to be customer facing, right? So let's say if you're working in a fast food restaurant or perhaps you get a job at an amusement park or maybe the supermarket, more than likely you're going to be interacting with customers and having that ability to have that good interpersonal, communication and eye contact, and just being that people person is going to be a very great skill if you're going to be in a customer-facing position, right? On the flip side, they may ask you, what are your weaknesses, right? So think about some things that you want to improve. Let's say you may say that, well, I'm not as good with numbers, but I'm working on improving my math skills. Or perhaps you may say, well, I tend to procrastinate a little bit. I kind of put things off that are challenging, but I'm working on, stepping up to the plate and taking on those difficult tasks and not getting into the habit of, pushing things down the road, right? Because a lot of us have that procrastination weakness, but it's not just identifying what that weakness is, but also showing that, you're taking steps to improve on that weakness as well, all right? Another question that they may ask is, why should we hire you? Right, that's maybe like one of the latter questions they may ask before they're ready to wrap up the interview. Maybe one of the last questions that they ask you. Just pretty much, pitch yourself, say, who you are, what you do, and why you're a great fit for the role, and how you'll be able to help the company in their endeavors. May also ask you, why do you want this job, right? And you don't just want to say, because I want to make some money, right? If like as a teenager, if it's your first position or one of your first positions, just let them know that you want to gain work experience. You want to be able to learn more about the particular industry that you may be working in. You want to build a certain type of skills. Like I said, right now, no matter what company that you work for, customer service is a very essential skill to have, right? Being able to relate with people and help others. And oftentimes people just think when you say customer service, you're thinking about customers outside the company, right? But at the same time, customer service also relates to people inside the company as well. Some of your coworkers, and being able to relate with them and be able to work together as a team to get certain tasks done, right? So that's a very essential skill. Another question that they may ask you, I got some written down here. What does good attendance look like to you, right? Because a lot of employers, especially when hiring young candidates, a lot of the big issues that they have is attendance, right? They feel that young people aren't as punctual as older adults, right? Because they feel that teens are not as serious about positions. So being able to articulate, let them know what you feel like good attendance look like, being on time or being early on a position, and if there's any type of situation taking place, if you're going to be late or absent for a particular day, being able to articulate that to your employer, let them know that you have a situation going on, or to communicate that information in advance. That way they're able to prepare for an event that you're absent or you're going to be late. A lot of times we don't think about the downstream impact of you not being at work on time or being at the work that day. Because let's say if you're working at a retail company, you're working at, let's say, McDonald's, Burger King, and they have each role, let's say they have like 5 people on the shift, and each person has a position or a responsibility during that shift, and if you're not there, or if you're going to be late, it may throw everything off, right? Just imagine if a basketball team and they expect 5 people to be on the court to play, but then the center doesn't show up or the center is late, then they only have 4 people to play against another opponent that's going to have 5 people. How does that impact the team? So the same way, if you're at work, they expect to have a certain amount of people there to work the shift because everybody has a responsibility. And with you not being there, it kind of throws things off. So you always want to be punctual and respectful of time and make sure that you're getting there on time and working your complete shift. Another question they may ask you is, where do you see yourself within the next 2 to 3 years, right? And this is a great opportunity for you to express what your goals and dreams are. You may say that, within the next 2 to 3 years, depending upon how old you are, you may say, I'll be getting ready for college, or perhaps if you're not going to college, you may want to go to trade school, or if you want to go straight into the workforce. Just let them know what you envision yourself being for the next 2 to 3 years, right? And perhaps how this role that you're working in or that you're looking at, how that's going to help you get to where you want to be in the future, right? So let's say you're looking to gain experience. Like I said, working in a customer-facing role, you're interacting with people. It helps you build interpersonal skills, learning how to have great customer service and so on. That can be leveraged later on. No matter what position that you're going into, that's going to help you a great deal, knowing how to interact and interact with other people, right? Another great question is, how do you handle feedback? Right? Because sometimes you may get some positive feedback for what you're doing. Sometimes it may be some constructive criticism on what you're doing, right? How do you handle that? Do you give pushback when somebody doesn't agree with the way that you're doing a certain thing, right? Are you open to receiving feedback? And not everybody is, because some people, get triggered by criticism, and being able to take on feedback and apply it can help you excel as you try to advance in your career. Because, we're all learning, no matter what level you are in the workforce or in life, there's always opportunities to learn and do things better, right? So it's always great to be able to take on feedback and apply it and to improve your skill set. See what else I got here. What schedule can you work, right? I was laughing a few weeks ago. I was doing a workshop, and I was telling people that a lot of times, as parents, if the parents that are out here listening, our kids make up their own schedules or make up plans without informing us what the plans are, and not realizing that oftentimes we're the means of transportation, right? So knowing what schedule you can work, right? Do you have your own transportation? Do you drive yourself? Or are you taking public transportation to get back and forth to work? Or are you going to take an Uber? So on and so forth. And do you have school? So on. And, what else do you have going on in your life that may impact the time that you're able to go to work? So being able to communicate that as well. If you know that you're in school from 8 or 9 in the morning to 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, what time can you get to work? Okay, well, I may be available from 5 to 5 to 9 during the week, and you may have open, more availability during the weekend when you're not in school, right? So being able to express what your schedule is and knowing that, okay, how am I going to get back and forth to work, right? So informing your parents or your guardian, or if you have someone else that's reliable, knowing the bus schedule and so on, all that information is important. Another question they may ask you, how do you handle stress, right? That's another question you may want to look at. Let's see what else. Now, one thing that you'll find in a lot of interviews, that a lot of employers are asking what's called behavioral questions, right? Or behavioral interview questions. And what those are is that they'll pose a scenario and ask, how would you handle a situation that you may come across, right? And the reason why they ask that, because they want to see how you handle situations in the past, because oftentimes that's an indicator how you'll react to that same situation in the future. So, for example, oftentimes these behavioral questions, they'll start off with, tell me about a time when, right? You may say, tell me about a time you had to solve a problem, or tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer. Tell me a time you had to resolve a conflict, right? So all these are pretty much designed to help, kind of see what type of experience you have in certain situations, right? So let's say, for instance, they ask you a question. They may say, tell me about a time you had to meet a deadline, but had limited time or a short amount of time to get that task done, right? So what you can say is, now, a great methodology or a great approach to handling or answering these type of questions is what's called the STAR method, right? STAR, right? So what you do when you respond to the question with the answer, you want to start off with the S, which is the situation, right? So you think about a situation that you had your own experience in, and when answering these questions, you don't want to answer it hypothetically. You want to come up with a real situation that you actually experienced and be able to articulate that back to the interviewer. So the S is the situation. So for the question I just asked, tell me about a time you had to meet a deadline, but only had a short amount of time. You can say something along the lines of, okay, well, there was a time in school that we had a science project to complete within a week's time. And so the situation was, I'm in school, you're in school, you have a science project, and you have a week to get it done. And it's a group project, right? So S is the situation. The T is the task, right? So what role did you play in this particular situation? So obviously you're one of the team members that is working on this team for the school project. So you can explain that, within that situation, that you have this group project to work on. You have a week to get it completed, but the challenge was, the challenge was that all of you all, are active. You all have like after school programs that you're a part of. Maybe you're part of a sports team or a club or something like that. So being able to meet after school to work on a project, it would have been, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? So that was the issue. You have a school project, it's during a week, and you have a limited amount of time to get it done. So what action did you all take? Well, you can say, you try to coordinate everybody's schedule, and we all kind of realized that everybody had the same lunch break, right? Everybody took lunch at the same time. So lunchtime was an opportunity for you all to work on the project together, because you couldn't do it after school. So what you did was you communicated with your teachers and to see if perhaps, you all could meet in the library during lunch to work on the project, right? So you can say, well, The issue with we was unable to meet after school, so we spoke with our teachers, and we were able to meet during lunch in the library, and they gave us time during that period to work on this particular project. And then the R is the result, and you can say as a result with us working on this project during the day as opposed to in the evening, we were able to meet the deadline and get the school project done, right? So the situation, the task, the action that you took, and the results. That's the best approach when you're trying to, answer behavioral interview questions, right? Now, what people don't also realize is that in a job interview, it's not just the company interviewing you, but it's also an opportunity for you to interview the company as well, right? So what you want to do is beforehand, you want to research that company, right? Take some time to research to find out, okay, what industry is the company in? Because that may be another question they may ask you. They may ask you, okay, what do you know about this company and what we do, right? So if you took the time to research and looked online and not just apply, but say, okay, even though we all know McDonald's, it doesn't hurt to go on the website and look at their mission statement and see what the company's all about, right? Also look up some recent news articles and see if there's anything that's happening in the news that may impact the way that the day-to-day operations of the business. Let's say you're working at the supermarket, do the same thing, right? Take some time to research and investigate and see, what the company's about, who the founder is, and that way you can help and, create some conversation, during the interview. Because at the same time, they're trying to see if you're a good fit for them. You want to see if that company's a good fit for you, right? So, because another question they're going to ask you, towards the end of the interview, they're going to ask you, what questions do you have for us, right? So if you did some research, they may help you trigger or create some questions that you'll ask the interviewer, right? Now, another common question that you can ask them is that, what does success look like in this particular role? Like what qualities are you looking for the person who's going to take on this particular job? And they'll tell you what they're looking for, right? They may say, well, we want someone that is, self-driven, articulate, punctual, and they'll tell you what they're looking for that particular role. And you can also, formulate your answers to show how you fit what they're looking for that particular position, right? So that's, a good way to ask them what they're looking for in this particular position. Another great question you could ask them is that, what challenges are you all facing right now, right? What are some of the pain points that your team is experiencing, right? Again, that gives you an idea of what some of the pain points that they're facing right now, and how you're able to, and you can kind of figure out, okay, how you're able to step in and resolve some of those problems. Let's say if you're working at a supermarket, they may say, one of the pain points we have right now is that a lot of employees aren't getting to work on time. We have a lot of people who call out. We have, people who aren't showing great customer service. That lets you know that, okay, if you come to work on time, if you display great customer service, if you don't call out, right, and show that, how you've always been punctual in the past and so on, that gives you a great chance of filling in that role. And if you continue to do so, then you may be a good fit and be able to stay in that role as well. So like I said, best practice is before you go in a job interview, take some time, research some questions online, and, not just look at the questions, but sit down with a friend or a family member and practice answering those questions as well. That's going to give you some practice and help with the nervousness as you're going to into the interview, as well as, again, help with your confidence. Because if you're sitting there and you hear these questions that you've practiced already, and you're like, okay, boom, I'm prepared. I know these answers. I'm able to articulate them well. And it's going to, again, help you as you try to land that position, and also help to impress that interviewer. All right. So thank you all for taking the time to join me this evening. As a reminder, don't forget, go to the website, maliksfirstjob.com, and get your copy of the books. The 2 books I recommend for all my teenagers out there is Malik's First Job, Financial Principles for Teens, Learn How to Properly Manage Your Money, and also the Interview Playbook, The Teen's Guide to Landing the Job, because we want to help you get in those positions to start earning some money and putting some money in your pocket. That way you're able to understand how to properly manage your finances, right? So again, thank you all for joining me this evening. See y'all next Wednesday. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.